Auburn's biggest offseason win. There's been so many, it's tough to choose.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me today, special guest Nathan King of 247 and auburnundercover.com. Be sure to go sign up over there. They do a fantastic job. We'll talk about the recruiting trends, both with Auburn and nationally, as well as what game could change the season the most this year. But Nathan, we were talking about this before we clicked record. So many off-season wins for the Tigers. I mean, you could go in a bunch of different directions, but the one you shared I thought was particularly interesting because you may be right, and I didn't even think of it.
Yeah, I think it was early February when I had heard that some bigger programs, not bigger, big programs were trying to sway DJ Durkin. And I thought Auburn's commitment to that, he now makes $3.1 million, which is would have made him the highest paid coordinator in the sport last season. Now I believe Jim Knowles at Penn State is making more than that. But it was a tremendous commitment by them, and it was one that, if you remember last season, Zach, I mean, toward the end of the year, I remember specifically some of the outgoing seniors like Eugene Asante and Jalen McLeod after the Iron Bowl talking about, yes, the future's bright. Yes, they're going to be really talented. But Eugene Asante in particular was like, you have to have DJ Durkin in the middle of it. You have to have him kind of running the show and continuing that operation. I mean, when we're so close to it, we were able to see how good their defense was relative to what the circumstances were. Last year didn't necessarily have a lot of star power in terms of experience, playing more true freshmen than anyone in college football, and yet they still finished in the middle of the pack in the SEC. And I also think that they gave them chances to win game after game. And I mean, really just the potential that this gives them going into this season for a year where, look, the offense should be better. The offense needs to be better, but you need to rely on that defense. It needs to be kind of the constant for you. Kind of going back to, I think if they can return to like the Kevin Steele type seasons where it was a given they were going to be a top 25 defense, top 20 SP plus defense every single year. I think that, sort of flew under the radar before spring practice happened. Auburn was able to keep DJ Durkin happy. Obviously, we could touch on a number of personnel upgrades, guys like Eric Singleton, guys like Jackson Arnold, getting an actual left tackle, all those things are great. But I think when we look back next season, if Auburn's defense is as solid as we all think it's going to be, I think the fact that they didn't have to have coordinator turnover that we've seen so many times at Auburn over the last few years, the fact they didn't have to do that and they can continue to take these freshmen on defense and mold them now into sophomores and juniors with the same coordinator, I think it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, retention it always seems to fly under the radar. I mean, you could say the same thing like with Amaris Williams. Like most people forget that he entered the portal and then DJ Durkin was a big part of him coming back. But one of the things you said about, last year not really having the star power, man, like you got to think that's about to change. And, going into last year, I would have said like maybe J-Mac had the potential to be a star. I certainly feel that way about Kieran going into this year, but obviously with Keldric, I mean, I think he could be exceptional. And then, I'm super high on the corners. And then, what does DeMarcus Riddick do with his next step? Like you said, so many of those true freshmen players, they're ready to take that next step. I mean, Auburn should be absolutely loaded with stars on the defensive side of the football now.
I mean, again, it goes back to, you mentioned guys like Amaris Williams, guys like DeMarcus Riddick. Jay Crawford was better than Kay and Lee in some senses. Like he was one of the best. I think
Jay Crawford is like the breakout player in the SEC next year. I'm very high on him.
Yeah, he was tremendous. And you could say the same thing about, I think one of the most underrated players on the team is Caleb Harris. He's the leading returning tackler on this defense. And he was starting in the SEC as a true freshman at safety and sort of making a play every single game where we were like, wow, it's crazy that this guy is a freshman. Yeah, I mean,
I think he's a big deal culturally as well. I don't know if a lot of people really pick up on that, but in the locker room, it seems like he's one of those guys.
It was so Christian and Jason are always really high on him, which I deferred to their knowledge, having seen him over the years. But it was last spring, and we were talking to Charles Kelly when he was here. I think it was like a recruiting weekend, and we're chatting Charles Kelly, and he was like, "Yeah, Caleb Harris is gonna play. Like he's going to play like very soon. And we're like, oh, like have a chance at playing time. And he was like, I would not be surprised if he's starting by the end of the year. And it's like, okay, then, all right, whatever you say. And then get to the season now. And last year, obviously, he was tremendous. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about taking that sophomore jump for a lot of these guys. If DeMarcus Riddick can take on having a bigger role now as like the number one linebacker, if you want to call him that, kind of the leader there,
Sure.
in the middle. Amaris Williams is a guy who can take on a little bit bigger of a role. He was so transparent. He was so forthcoming in the spring about like just not having the right mindset as a freshman. You mentioned when he was in the portal, DJ Durkin and a couple other staffers took a plane to North Carolina, went to his house, and we're like, "Hey, man, would you consider not doing that?"
Yeah, it's like you could be okay. This was cool. Like, come back now, please. Thanks.
Right, you could be a really big part of this defense. Another guy too. I mean, we could go down the list here. Jamonte Waller was a top 100 recruit. Remember how big of a deal it was for them to flip him
Good point.
from Florida? He didn't just disappear because of that foot injury. Now it was still nagging him in the spring, but yeah, I mean, it's tough to have, for me though, it's tough to have any conversation about the defense without going back to the defensive line. Like, who is it? Who's the dude? Who's the dude at defensive tackle? They got through last season okay without having a true difference maker there. Now Keldric's going to kick inside, and he's going to be a monster when he's at defensive end. And I think if somebody like a Morris or Kieran Crawford can pair with him and give you like a pass rushing duo, can Malik Blockton take a step forward? I'm a big Jay Hardy guy. I think Jay Hardy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We haven't even. I don't think we've even seen the best of him. He's like a fifth-year senior.
Yeah.
I think he comes back from his injury. I think he did a lot of good things 2 years ago at Liberty. I think he can be a pretty high impact player. But it's like talking about a Liberty transfer, talking about a Florida A&M transfer, you're talking about a Western Kentucky transfer. It's like, which one of these guys that were not super big needle movers in the portal are going to make a difference there? I think they could get along just fine without a superstar at defensive tackle. But man, if we're sitting around here in November and we're talking about Malik Blockton or we're talking about Jay Hardy and we're like, wow, really big season for them, I think that makes a huge, huge difference for this Auburn defense.
Yeah, and that's just a spot where when they had a similar tactic at getting, experience depth last year, outside of Bleedy, they missed on a lot of these guys. Like with Gage Keys, Isaiah Ricks was fine. I mean, he played a good bit. And then Trill Carter was the other one. It's like they kind of missed on most of those guys. Yeah,
I mean, getting a defensive tackle, a high-end defensive tackle in the portal, it's like getting a center in the portal in college basketball. Like when a good one hits the market, it is an extremely hot commodity. I mean, I can't even think off the top of my head. There's probably only 2 or 3 this entire portal cycle that it was like, wow, huge defensive tackle, transfer, gotta go get him. You kind of just have to pick your spots. Yeah, you're right. You were right. Bleedy was okay. But if you had told me at the beginning of last year, like, hey, Marcus Harris's little brother is going to be better than some of these guys, I would have been like, yeah, I guess that makes a good bit of sense. I mean, Trill Carter and Gage Keys,
he told us that. He's like, he's going to be better than me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. You're just gassing up your bro. And I'm like, oh no, he might be. What a great situation Auburn would be in with that. All right, I'll share my win of the offseason in just a moment, as well as what game could potentially change the season for the Tigers in 2025. That's all coming up next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. We've all checked our account and been like, oh my goodness, I spent way too much money doing blank, whether vacationing or ordering food. Food delivery seems to be a big one for a lot of people. Monarch Money comes into play. They answer those questions for you. They help you track everything. Monarch Money, it's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's your complete financial command center. So stop managing your money and start building wealth with Monarch Money. Gives you surprising insights, all-in-one convenience, and easy collaboration. If you've got a family member that you want to help track things with, it's easy to sync up and pair up all at Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Nathan King of Auburn Undercover hanging out with us today. I know you mentioned a few of the personnel wins, and I think Eric Singleton, the addition of Eric Singleton, is such a big deal. Videos of him, that he clipped up of practice last week of him just like cooking some guys. I mean, it's just like, I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do in that situation. I think as far as the development of all of these younger receivers, as far as Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons and Perry and Bryce, I think they all get better just because of this addition of Eric Singleton.
Yeah, it takes some pressure off, right, of a guy like a Malcolm Simmons. Not to say that he's going to not have a big role, because I think he will have a huge role, but it's like you just, and a guy like Cam Coleman, I mean, you get to say, have fun out there on the outside. You just stay out there.
Yeah.
You know, we've got it covered here on the inside with guys like Singleton and Malcolm Simmons. I mean, it really just took this room from, you know, young and full of potential to, oh, this could be one of the best receiving rooms in the SEC and in the country. I mean, and also the undertones that getting a guy like Singleton showed. It showed good NIL commitment in the portal. It showed an ability to fight off programs like Texas and Ole Miss and Georgia, which is not easy to do for any sort of player in the portal. It's also, I think it's a great story for a guy like Singleton, a guy that didn't get a good enough look from this previous staff. And he told us in the spring, sometimes he just walks around the building and looks up and he's like, I can't believe I'm here. And so that's, you know, that's what you like to hear. It doesn't necessarily seem like a, you know, not that this is a bad thing, but when you get in the portal and you're a player who can go get a bunch of money. But for Eric Singleton, I think that was the case. And then I also think he got to come, you know, he got to be closer to home and he got to be at a place that we know he really enjoys at Auburn. Yeah, you and I were talking about this just the other day. I think Singleton's going to be huge as well for what he can do in the run game. That was a wrinkle we saw in the spring that I saw more there than maybe years prior. And I think the reason behind that, you might see some touch sweeps for him and Malcolm Simmons, is they don't have a Jarquez Hunter, and Jarquez Hunters do not grow on trees. And this is a different conversation, but the run game is a little bit concerning, I think, because you don't have a lead back. How do you offset that? You have a quarterback, good legs, who can run the system, and you got a couple receivers that you can put the ball in their hands. So that's a facet of Singleton I'm interested to see how they use this season.
Yeah, I mean, if you set that up and all this, you know, pre-snap motion with Singleton and Simmons and the threat to give them the ball, like with both of those guys on the field, that's just a lot for a defense to have to deal with athletically, schematically. I mean, I always say you want to make college defenders make as many decisions as possible, because after a certain amount, they're going to start making wrong ones. And that's when you hope, you know, a guy like Jackson Arnold can capitalize. I mean, Freeze has the toys. He's got the toys to work with. All the tools are in that receiver room now. And just putting both those guys on the field at the same time is going to be a problem for people.
Yeah, and Perry Thompson was in the mix there, doing that same sort of stuff in the spring. And like we talked about earlier, you get all that motion, you get all that attention, and you can just sort of leave Cam Coleman out there.
How in the mix is Perry, do you think?
I think he's in the mix. I think he's in the 2 deep. I think he's in the 4 or 5, right? You play like 4 or 5. It gets tough. You know, it's a funny exercise we do every offseason. And then you get to the season, and you know this, like it's kind of crazy to think about how few players play. Like you look at the end of the year and you consider when it gets to SEC play, you know, we can go through all this stuff in fall camp and spring and talk about the cornerback rotation, but it's like, you know how many corners play? Like 3. You don't use that many unless you really are confident about your depth. At receiver, maybe you play 4 or 5 guys. I think this is a room where they can play 6, because I think Sam Turner has an opportunity to get a few snaps.
They're going to have less tight end snaps as well, which will go to receivers. So it'll be a little different than normal, but you're right. I mean, like we had this conversation probably about a month ago. It's like, how many relevant receivers are there in this offense? And the cutoff seems like we all agree on the top 3. We may disagree on the order, but Singleton, Coleman, Simmons. Then after that, it seems like Horatio, you got to put Horatio there. And then it's like, is it Perry or Turner after that? A lot of Auburn fans are really excited for Bryce Cain. I don't know if he's going to come this season or not. We'll see. But I don't know where the line is. Is it after Horatio? Is it after Perry? Is it after Turner? It is an interesting game to play.
Yeah, I think the line would be after Perry. And you can make the argument for Horatio. I think Horatio is probably one of the more kind of slept on guys, just because of his production and what we heard in the spring of like, hey, this is the leader. This is the guy. I love Eric Singleton, but he's not a rah kind of guy. And Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons are still young. And so Horatio Fields comes in and takes on a leadership role. He can do a lot of different things in terms of where he lines up in this group. Perry is like, I think, a comparable ceiling to Horatio in this offense, but it's like different because he's young and he's got all this talent, as opposed to Horatio, maybe not as much high end talent, but way more experience. I think those guys may be like 4A and 4B right now, honestly.
Yeah. I think Horatio could be like what we wanted Nick Mardner to be several years ago.
Oh gosh,
what a deep cut in multiple
Nick
ways.
Mardner,
Sadly.
number like a top 5 pick in the CFL draft, wasn't he?
Was he?
That was cool, at least. Yeah, I think so.
Good
He's
for
Canadian.
him. Good.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Great
forgot
for him.
about that. Good for him.
Great
Good
for him.
for
One
him.
of the things that sucks is when a guy comes in and only has 1 year left, regardless of the sport, and it just doesn't work out. Like the JP Pegues thing last year. You're like, that just sucks, man. That sucks. That sucks for him because you thought it was going to work. And it's got to be painful to just sit around and just kind of watch that it just didn't.
Yeah, because all parties involved wanted the same thing. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. Yeah. All right. Which game could potentially change the season? I can't get over. Like, I want to give a more fun answer than this, Nathan, but like, I can't get past the opener. I can't get past the trip to Waco. And like, I think Auburn's going to win it. I don't think it's a guarantee, but I think Auburn's going to win it. We saw some movement on the line this week, which is exciting, but I want to be, seem more sophisticated and say like, oh, well, at Oklahoma or at Texas A&M, or maybe they get Georgia at home. But I just think like if we beat Baylor, it's like, okay, there might be somewhat of a collective sigh of like, okay, cool. Maybe the offense is finally clicking. But I just think on the other side of it is like, if you lose that game, like there will be like so much panic throughout East Alabama. It will be crazy. So I can't get past the opener when I talk about this.
Yeah, and just the opening part of the schedule. This schedule is weird. It's also
if you get through Georgia and you're
bad.
still alive though, like watch out.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's very unbalanced. I think with Baylor, you could. I don't know if this is gonna make any sense. You could get away with not playing super well and win that game because you had all offseason, you had all fall camp to prepare for it.
Sure.
So I'll put a little bit of weight on like Oklahoma, I think, because it's not like you can lie by week 4, I don't think. I mean, it's like you're either gonna have it or you're not. And we'll see how good. I mean, I like Oklahoma. I like what they've done at quarterback and at running back. I don't know about anything else. They lost a lot of pieces off that defense. Their receivers are all like FCS Division II transfers, and so I just and their O-line as well. Like I don't really know what to think outside of John Mateer and Jaden Ott. And so, man, I'm not saying you have to win that game because I'm with you. It's like get out of Georgia and just like if you're alive, if you're not like literally burning everything down, you're good. Just hold on because from then on, every game is winnable. Every single game is winnable after that. And not to say that they're not previously, but like it's a I hesitate to say favorable, but like it's a stretch where you could really take advantage after that. Stealing 1 or 2 of these early road games, absolutely.
Yeah, if you find a way to win 2 of those 3 road games,
oh my gosh!
It's like, all right, let's say you drop either Oklahoma or Texas A&M. Let's say you split that, and then let's say you lose a home to Georgia. Obviously, it's at Jordan Hare. Crazy things have happened. We'll see. But if that's it, if you go into the rest of the stretch with 2 losses, watch out for the Tigers.
Yeah, I agree because I think this is a team that needs to go that should go like 8-4, and so I think if you set yourself with that table where it's like the rest of the way. And look, Alabama is, I think, going to be really good, but it's like that's one you could make this conversation talking about a game that I don't know if it would change the season, but it's like how big would it be in year 3?
I think any win over Georgia or Bama will change the whole perception of where Hugh Freeze is amongst the standing amongst Auburn fans.
Yeah, I mean, think about if they were to split those games, just name your game. If they were to take one or both. From obviously that's really big wishing right there. But it's like, yeah, if they were to just take one of them, that would be really big. Yeah, I mean, something like Oklahoma, because think about as well, like if you go there and you win, and I don't think there's animosity for Jackson Arnold toward that program. It just kind of, like we're talking about, just kind of didn't work out. But it's like, could you imagine him going in there and winning that game and the kind of confidence it would give you?
The storylines for that game are going to be crazy with Jackson, and then the whole everybody's going to dig up the clip of Jaden Ott, saying Auburn's just a name and all that stuff. It's going to be an electric week leading into that game.
Yeah, and I mean it's and again, like we talked about, you got to do something there to drum up some excitement in those first few road games because and nobody's going to ask you to be perfect, but from then, I mean, if you get past home against Missouri, at Arkansas, home against Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, home against Mercer before the Iron Bowl. I could make a I can make a very easy argument for you right now. Auburn wins every single one of those games. I'm not saying they're going to, but it's really easy to see. And so
I'm with you.
you just
I'm with you.
got to survive up until that point.
Yeah. Yeah, we're on the same page there. Has recruiting slowed down? How big of a deal is it for the Auburn Tigers, or is this just a college football thing? That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Nathan King of Auburn Undercover, our guest today. So, I mean, it's been a while since Auburn's gotten a commitment, had a ton of OVs this past weekend, but there were a ton of OVs all throughout college football, Nathan, and not a whole lot of commitments. Is this in your mind just because, okay, like, there's no reason not to take all these OVs if you're a player? Or is this, hey, there's so much that could potentially change over the next few months that the nature of this is just, hey, let's wait and see what all happens with rev sharing and the house settlement case. And they're just kind of being instructed to say, hey, hold on a second.
I think the calendar changing makes a big difference here. The fact that you go dead now in July makes, I mean, I think this, like you said, I mean, it's all across the sport. It's really not, it's not just Auburn. But I think over the next month, you're going to see a lot of movement, whether that's, I mean, and it kind of got kicked off a little bit with a guy like Travis Burgess.
Good point.
Moving the quarter, shifting the quarterback picture to be a little bit clearer. I think everything's going to get a little clearer over the next 3.5 weeks, just from guys over the weekend that we heard who were on campus for OVs. Like every single one of them, number one, wants to be committed before their senior season. That's kind of a given when it comes to recruitments most of the time. But there's a lot of guys too. I mean, I think about a guy like Vodney Cleveland who wants to decide in June. I know that CD Morgan is coming up in July. And so the early OVs for Auburn, getting so many of them this past weekend, I think just has to be something where you have to continue to chip away at it. Because it's not necessarily ideal to have the early ones. You kind of would rather have the late ones. But as you mentioned, nowadays there are a lot of other factors at play, and I think Auburn handled that weekend just about as well as you could have. Tons of players were talking about setting a bar, and I think that was really important because for most of these guys, if not, I think all, I'm not huge up to speed on the recruiting calendar, but like I think most of all of them that this was their first OV, and so now they go into these other ones with a standard set. It has to compare to what Auburn did on May 15th or whatever, and so. Yeah, I mean, I would expect a lot more movement here soon. Remember that last year into the summertime was when the 2026 class jumped up to being number one in the country for a little bit at Big Cat Weekend. The 2025 class was kind of putting the finishing touches on. And so, I mean, I wouldn't be too concerned about it, but I do think it is worthwhile. There's a thread on our board the other day that I was looking at, like, when does it become, time to be concerned? Yeah. I think it's when the targets that you feel lukewarm about, when every single one of them goes elsewhere, that's when it's time to be a little bit concerned about what your board looks like. For now, there's just too many good players left on Auburn's board that they feel really good about. That it's just plain and simple. Yeah. And there are a few positions that I think are more interesting than others. Like that, it seems like they're swinging for the fences for running backs. Jay Lamar, Derek Cooper on campus this past weekend. And then they don't really have another one for a while. They've got, Crowell coming in a few weeks, but I mean, all signs are pointing to Bama, but we'll see. This coaching staff is not going to back down in a recruiting battle for sure. And then, you mentioned Travis Burgess, the Grayson quarterback, picking North Carolina earlier in the week. And so, it seems like it was either him or Landon Duckworth at quarterback. And it's just like, what happens if you miss on some of these positions where it seems like you're like swinging for the fences a little bit? When do you pivot? I'm interested to see that for sure. And I'm also interested to see how many players need to see Auburn start winning a little bit more. And then, is Hugh Freeze in a situation to flip kids in early December? I don't know. Auburn's in a different spot than they were the past few years. Yeah, I mean, you think about a guy like Zion Ely, got so much attention over the last 5 or 6 days on like hashtag flip watch. I think this is like they wanted to get him in and get him on an OV, but I think this is something that can go all the way till the fall. And so we've seen the kind of noise that, I mean, signing day last year was kind of and a lot of it didn't go Auburn's way, but it was kind of a refresher from the past of like a lot of signing day flips. And you wonder about, a guy like Naeem Offord. I know that Oregon ponied up and had plenty to offer there, but I don't think Auburn was necessarily skimping in that regard. And you wonder what a few more of those wins, because when when those guys are on campus, and look, the guys that are committed, that are in the boat and want to change things, they're there, and they don't really care if you go 5-7, 3-9, or like 6-6. It's all kind of the same to them. But I do think there is, like you mentioned, I do think there is a contingency of recruits going into this season. Look, they're not blind. They're tapped into this stuff more than most fans are. Like, year 3 matters. Doesn't matter who you are. Year 3 matters. Proof of concept matters. And if, especially for like offensive recruits, I think, because the defensive recruits are going to watch that side of the ball, especially for offensive recruits, start to put things together, start to have consistent quarterback play, more dynamic quarterback play. That changes things in an instant, especially for the wide receivers and the running backs and O-linemen when you look at this class. And so, I think most of the time, like the first couple years, I didn't think it mattered that much what the record looked like. Sure, you could have added an extra guy here or there if you had, beaten like an Alabama in year 1 or something. I don't know. But I think this season, it does matter for them to finish the season strong.
Yeah, no question. 100% agree. Nathan King, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
For sure. AuburnUndercover.com. As we record this right now, Jason is over in Hoover covering the SEC baseball tournament. So it is that time of year, and not this weekend, but it seems like it's going to be a one-on, one-off sort of for recruiting weekends. And so Christian Clemente is back in town, and hopefully on the basketball front for myself, some news coming. We are all twiddling our fingers about Todd Pettiford and an international player to be named that Bruce Pearl talked about. And so it's fun. It's busy. Doesn't necessarily feel like the off season here in late May, and we're having a good time. Go join us over at Auburn Undercover.
Yep, absolutely worth your attention for sure. Hey, please like the video, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.